And everyone, welcome to eduStream. eduStream is a program. This is our third annual eduStream where we try to focus on video production and streaming for the educational market. That's K through 12. That's local college, community colleges. That is state schools up to big schools like Ohio State, Penn State, UCLA, USC. We're going to give you things that you can do to produce video, to live stream video, and do things like this. Today is the eduStream is brought to you by Broadfield Distributing and Video Guys, but today we've got a very special show with some very special guests. Today's theme is how can you choose the right camera for the right job in your school? There are so many different PTZ and other cameras to choose from that we thought it would be really beneficial for us for eduStream to really go through what are some of the different features, different performances, different things you need. You know, you may need a 30x camera with a high frame rate and 4K, or you may just need a USB camera that, just can give you some closer PTZ. So we're going to go handling all that stuff. So today's show, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Gary Batan. I'm the president of Video Guys and presenter for eduStream. I also happen to be a member of my local Board of Education. I've been doing that for the last 15 years with 3 years off for good behavior, as I like to joke. We do a regular show called Video Guys Live on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. We've partnered with our partner Broadfield Distributing and our vendors to bring you this eduStream series, which is really focusing on video for education. So we can bring up the next slide. And let's meet our guest. But before we do, now it's a little awkward for me on this. It's a little bit scripted and stuff like that. So I'm going to try to get back on script, since we're 30 seconds in and I already went off script. So live video from the classroom is much different than the production requirements in other parts of our school. Let's join our panelists as we discuss different applications and the right camera considerations. Are you setting up an AV conference center? Are you going to need a camera with a large field of view? Are you building a studio room to use for distance learning and staff development? Let's talk about the advantages of multi-camera and remote production workflows. Are you live streaming special school events? Let's talk about getting the best optical image quality in low light or stage light auditoriums and how different the workflows are from different productions on the athletic fields as well. Today we are joined by Gregor from Panasonic, Edgar from JVC, I'm learning this, and Paul from PTZ Optics. Guys, introduce yourselves, say hello.
Hello.
Happy to be here.
Hey.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Cool. So I actually wanted to get a little bit more. So let's go around the room and let each of you talk about who you're from, because I'm botching this royally, because normally I just talk about the stuff I know how to talk about, but I promise you guys at some point I'm going to get good at this. Let's start with the man over here, Paul from PTZ Optics. Tell us about yourself and your company.
Hi, everybody. My name is Paul Richards from PTZ Optics. We manufacture pan, tilt, and zoom cameras for live streaming and video communications. You might have seen me on YouTube or one of our live streams. We do a lot of video content and production because we use these cameras to make videos all the time. And I'm really passionate about helping schools, obviously. And I'm excited to talk about whether it's in the classroom or in sports or an auditorium for theaters. The technology today has really made it easier to use video and take full advantage of some of these awesome new technologies.
Cool. Thank you very much. Next, let's go with Gregor Jones from Panasonic.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. My name is Gregor Jones. I'm with Panasonic. We're a company that's over 100 years old. We've been building robotic cameras longer than anyone. We're really excited to be here. I think, the education market and verticals are, just really important. And hope that this conversation everyone can learn from it. And again, I appreciate you having us on.
Awesome. And last but not least, Edgar from JVC. Tell us about JVC and what you do over there.
Thank you, Gary. I'm General Manager of Engineering for JVC Kenwood, USA. And, JVC is based in Japan, and we've been manufacturing cameras, consumer and professional, for a very long time. maybe not 100 years, but maybe 90 years. And of course, we have a lot of customers in education because we provide the full range of cameras, not only PTZ cameras, but also studio cameras and camcorders and some very unique cameras for sports applications, which can overlay score in a frame. And I really enjoy talking to educational customers because this is not just production. These are people who are teaching our kids and grandkids to use cameras. So it's very important, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And, the last 2 years on EduStream, a big focus was PTZ cameras, just because teachers and educators and schools needed PTZ cameras for this thing called distance learning. That was a theory that we didn't think we'd all have to be doing. But thanks to, a global epidemic, we had to put video inside schools and inside classrooms. And we just had to make things work, and we all did. And all your products made it work. And sometimes the school just needed 50 PTZ cameras. And quite frankly, they didn't care what the specs were. They just needed 50 by next Thursday because the kids were getting sent home or they had to set something up. But the world's changed. But the good news is that the IT departments that used to be the big hindrance to us getting our products into schools have learned that video could be their friend. They've learned that they don't have to do drops and rewire the whole school. There's ways to do things. They learned that it's not as terrifying and frightening as it is, and that the school's network isn't going to crash every other hour because there's video on it. But now that's opened an opportunity for us, because while they're not pumping money into putting video in every classroom and a camera in every classroom, they're expanding live production outside the classroom. So I want to talk about these new rooms that we're seeing schools are putting in. And I'm calling it a video services lab or broadcast media room. I mean, to be honest with you, it's really like putting a multi-purpose AV conference room in a school setting. But these are being used a lot in primary and secondary schools to broadcast board meetings, community events, and doing teachers are using it for class development or for their collaborative hours. If you've got 3 elementary schools and the reading teachers all have to get together to share a 3rd grade reading program they're going to launch, they can stay in their buildings. They don't have to leave the classroom anymore. They can each go to a room that's in their building, and it can be AV conferencing amongst each other. It could be putting on a class for a group of kids. It could be communicating with their administration, whatever it is. It allows teachers more time because they're not spending as much time going from point A to B, and it also allows them to communicate with their schools. So I'm going to kick it over to you guys, Paul, Edgar, and Gregor, on what's going on with this. So I'm going to let Gregor lead this one off and just talk to us about how these video service labs or broadcast media rooms are being used in education.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of something that has to fit into each school. And, as far as the solution goes, I think that, when you're choosing the products that go in there, it needs to be able to scale out, it needs to be able to meet all the needs, but it also needs to be able to, take care of the people who are using it, right? It needs to be simple and easy to use. And, as far as when you're kind of thinking about the products and choosing them, keeping things on the network is better than not nowadays. Getting people coming off of the copper and getting on the IP and the IT, as you mentioned there. And then I think considering things kind of like a Kairos system, which would be like a nucleus, and then things could kind of hang off of it, and you could operate the thing remotely, and those type of things come to mind. So
now, Edgar, I know you're a big fan of remote production and stuff like that. So talk about how you see JVC and your products integrating into that.
You're reading my mind. I was going to say that I'm very passionate about remote production, and we at JVC, we've been using video over IP for much more than 10 years, well before NDI and SRT. But let me tell you, I'm so happy that today video became much friendlier to IT environment, and also there were standards introduced like NDI and SRT, and this truly revolutionized production, because now you can easily send video not only over local area network but also remotely over the internet. And like I said, those standards like NDI, SRT, which are enabled in many cameras manufactured by JVC and others, I think that's very important, and that is also very helpful to make it easy, efficient, and IT department friendly.
Awesome. And now, Paul, your background actually began with AV conference rooms, and now you're into pro video and video streaming. So you're a great guy to talk about these educational huddle rooms or whatever we want to call them. So talk to us about it, and really what's the difference between like what a corporate application would be and how a school would use these rooms?
Yeah, well, in corporate, obviously, and some schools have this, it's about video conferencing. It's about let's connect with the world and do our job. Here in education, the big emphasis is on multi-purpose because we've got students coming in who might want to record a presentation. We have broadcast clubs that are live streaming school announcements, and we also have professors who are recording their lectures and posting them online. I was at UCLA in Los Angeles, and it was just amazing to see this really nice little broadcast room that had a green screen. And then they were showing me how the teachers were using PTZ camera to zoom in and produce maybe like 10 or 20 videos that eventually would become an entire lecture that would be posted on their learning management system. So the key is multi-purpose in these spaces, and then making it easy enough for anyone to use. Generally, you're going to see there's actually new people in higher education, especially, whose jobs it is to run these rooms, because a teacher by themselves maybe can't do it. But we're also seeing Zoom rooms and a lot of stuff where anyone from a student to a teacher can use them. So the big ease of use is huge here when you're trying to make a multi-purpose room work.
Now, you brought up higher education. Now, higher education has some of its own needs that like a K through 12 doesn't. You might have a lecture center that's, not a mile long, but it's seating, 200 or 300 kids, or it's a long room, or you might have a lab environment where the lab equipment's on one side of the room and the professor's on the other side of the room. The professor might be using chalkboards half the time and whiteboards half the time and PowerPoint, whatever he's going to use. So that multiple functionality, I think, is so important. And one of the things you mentioned was, how you control it. So I want to go back to Edgar at this point, because one of the things that's really cool, if you're in higher education, you could have 4 or 5 cameras, PTZ cameras, 1 or 2 set up. Let's say we had 6 cameras, 2 in the auditorium, the lecture center I described, 2 in the lab I described, and then 2 in, let's say, is in a music room where we're doing music for stuff like that. You don't need 3 sets of people to control that anymore, do you?
No, you don't. And the reason is that it's so closely integrated with the IT infrastructure. The cameras can be controlled over IP. And the moment you bring IP in, that means the internet. And when you bring internet in, that means you can have cameras in LA, studio in New York, and controlling this all from Tokyo. Absolutely.
So I like to say, on the large scale, you could be across the world, but on the smaller scale, if I'm even a community college, I can have a video production room that is now getting the feeds from these lecture centers to produce this video, where I can have video feeding the lecture center screens, if there's some screens in there live, while at the same time someone could be producing a stream to go out. And when we're talking about something like that, sometimes you need to integrate some mixing and switching as well. And we're going to do tomorrow's show on studio stuff. But Gregor, I think this goes really well with what you were starting to talk about, which was Kairos and the level of cameras that, and the integration that you guys do over IP with, your cameras. So tell us a little about that, Gregor, how that would be used in this higher education scenarios we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Paul said, a lot of this stuff has to do double duty. And, when you're talking about putting on the production and having something that can, control the cameras and, and control the screens and control, all the stuff right there in one place, the Kairos is an absolute excellent option for that. And when you're talking about controllability, there's, a lot of for example, our cameras, you can control them up to 5 controllers at the same time. So you could have a professional controller with, the real joystick. You could have something really simple, like what looks like a TV remote. So any student or volunteer could actually, operate the stuff, all the way down to just pulling up your laptop or your phone and just going into a browser, because all the control systems are built into the cameras, as well as all the streaming and things of that nature. So when you have something like a Kairos that can take advantage of that, and all your cameras can plug into it, and you can put on any production you want.
Cool. Now, when you're doing a video production like this, you're going to use PTZ cameras. Let's focus on PTZ cameras a little bit. And, you have certain considerations you need for those PTZ cameras. We got to look at the field of view, how smooth the PTZ controller is, presets. But the other things that I think we have to talk about is let's talk about when do you need 4K? When's HD okay? You know, talk about why you would need higher frame rates and things like that and where it could be. So what I'd like you to do is I'm going to give each of you a chance to describe like one of your cameras and how you think it would be used and why someone would pick like one version of your camera or the other. So Gregor, I want to start with you because you have a camera that's the UE150 that is like for event spaces. And you've got some cameras that are a little bit less expensive, like let's say a 80 or a 40. Why would you want one over the other? How would I make that decision if I'm trying to roll out better video for my video production and studio and sports and stuff as opposed to just getting distance learning in the classroom?
Sure, absolutely. Well, a lot of these cameras are doing both, right? And so I think, you know, when it comes to choosing a larger camera like a UE150 or something like an 80, a lot of it has to do with footprint. You know, how big can the camera be and the lensing and, you know, as far as the ins and outs, I mean, there's a lot of similarities there, but there are, you know, all the spigots are on at the same time. Yeah, I mean, it really would be kind of, you know, dealer's choice as far as which one they wanted to go with. Price is certainly a consideration. A lot of people don't even know that we actually have like $1,000 camera. We have the UE20 and the HE20, which are fantastic smaller cameras and compete really well. You know, we get a lot of, you know, we're famous for our big high end, you know, 150s like you're talking about, but really there's a whole plethora of options and it just depends on which one that fits the job. Yeah.
So Edgar, why don't you take off from there? You know, when you see the JVC product line where people are using stuff, why would they pick one camera over the other? And, you know, you've got some new cameras that are really sexy and cool. And, you know, why would someone want one of those?
Well, maybe I can make example from our new KY-PZ510 PTZ camera, which is truly universal. First of all, it can do object tracking. So presenter can simply grab a remote like this, press the button, and then camera will be following presenter around the classroom. And at the same time, this camera is capable of producing NDI for local, TriCaster or vMix, and also SRT for remote video switcher. And at the same time, it can also produce RTMPS for Facebook or YouTube. So it's a truly universal piece of equipment, which is very user-friendly, and that's why people like it very much.
Cool. And now, Paul, if you could, you know, we've covered some of that stuff. You've got a brand new series of products that have come out. Talk about which of your products you see fitting in where and why you think, you know, especially why don't you talk about, you know, why would I need a 30X or a 10X or a 12X? You know, what's that situations where I really pick what throw I want as well as what wide angle?
Sure. So our brand new camera line is called the PTZ Optics Move Camera Series. And you can get the Move 4K, which is in 4K, or the Move SE, which is available in 1080p. They are available, as you mentioned, in 12X, 20X, and 30X optical zoom lenses. So generally, there's a trade-off between how far can you zoom in, and a 30X, for example, can zoom into a head and shoulders shot at about 75 feet away. And a 12X can zoom in, you know, only from about, get that same head and shoulder shot of a teacher, you know, from only about 40 to 50 feet away. But the 12X, not only is it less expensive, but it also has a wider field of view. So for these, you know, smaller classrooms or spaces where people are going to be huddled up and closer to the camera, it's much better for that.
Cool. Now, Paul, you froze a little. My production team's going to work on unfreezing you. But in the meantime, I'm going to throw my next questions coming back to the other two guys. Don't worry, Paul's coming back. Maybe leave his lower third or what have you. But, you know, like I said, these rooms are being used for more than just, you know, student interactions. They're being used as a faculty development room or a traditional production studio, one-on-one. They're being used for so many different things. If you guys can bring up the next slide while you're working that out, I'll talk around that. So, you know, what's happening is these rooms are actually, could you just bring up the next slide, Adam? Adam, could you bring up the next slide? No, it's these rooms. And these rooms are being built to be flexible. Cool. It's live. And once again, I have the script. These guys have the PowerPoint. We're learning as we go. We lost Paul. Hey, welcome to live production, guys. This is what's going on. And if you are, I'm going to segue right now and say, you know, if you're a school, you can bring people in from a distance of what we're doing. We have a lot of complicated things going on right now. So just to let people know, we're bringing these three guys via Teams. We're producing the show on our TriCaster. We're outputting to this Sherpa service from Telestream that lets us add interactivity and questions and things like that. So we got a lot going on. And sometimes when you live stream, things don't go as well. Did the show yesterday work great? Did the test yesterday? Did the test this morning work great? There are any problems. Paul, are you back here?
I'm back. Sorry
awesome.
about that.
Great. So now let's, I think we talked about where these are being used in these AV rooms, but tomorrow's show is going to be focusing on, building out a studio lab. And one of the things that I've seen has gone on is a lot of schools that had video production studios, well, many of them were, I'm going to call them HD minus. They weren't really even an HD level room. There was usually something in that room that wasn't quite HD. It was being kind of upsampled or modified. It was older gear. They were using maybe an HDR output from a DSLR camera, not really using a good camera. And the truth of the matter is, I think a lot of schools are going to want to now take some of those resources and take their existing video studio and upgrade it or put a new one in. And I think one of the things they're going to want to really consider is 4K and making it an IP production studio. So I really want to talk about where you think what cameras fit in best for that kind of situation. And I'm going to start with you, Gregor. And the reason I want to start with you is because we're talking PTZ cameras, but you guys also have some cool handheld cameras that are all NDI. And you can get a mix of having some PTZ cameras and still have a live camera that a camera operator is using to move around. So talk about why someone might want a live camera versus a PTZ camera versus an all robotic studio.
Sure, absolutely. And so, the CX350 is the handheld camcorder, and it marries really well with the PTZs. A lot of people are using the UE150s as kind of their studio setups. And then you have the CX350, which you can put like a USB dongle on and go to a hotspot or, your phone for Wi-Fi for streaming. And then you could just take that, remotely. And so it just, it gives you scalability, right? And so also maybe one time a year you need 4 of those cameras, but you need to be able to operate them all from one place, right? So you could use like PTZ Control Center, which is a little bit of a misleading name because it includes the camcorders, including the CX350, including the CX4000. You can, see all of your cameras in one place. You can, color them. You can kind of get into the menus options and control them. Just having the ability to really have everything in one place and that one person can kind of manage it all together, and that, it just makes it super easy to take off of campus or bring back. It's really awesome. And we're talking about the 150, but actually the new camera that we just launched, the UE160, will also have that same USB dongle option. So if, there's a lot of people who take these robotic cameras and don't just install them, but put them on tripods and use them, in dual duty. Maybe put them inside of teleprompters, things like that. So, yeah.
Very cool. Now, Edgar, you guys have a new camera that you talked about that's going to be a handheld camera with NDI as well. So talk about how you see that working into a workflow for a school where they've got some PTZ cameras and your new camera, which I believe is going to be shipping when?
This is not exactly a new camera. This is GYHC 500 with a new NDI update. That's what it is.
Great.
And it will be shipping. Actually, it's already in the warehouse, so it will be shipping very soon. But it's a very good point about using handheld camcorders in a studio, and I completely agree with Gregor that it's not only because these cameras will give you better image quality in many cases, but it's also, we're talking about education. And when you use traditional camcorder, you have controls of iris, shutter, lens. You can see f-stop of the lens. You can see the focal distance of the lens. And remember that this is not just for the sake for production. It's also people are learning how to use those cameras. And when they use traditional video cameras in form of, let's say, camcorder, they can truly appreciate the manual controls. And that's where they can learn to understand what is f-stop, what is shutter, and how these parameters affect the production and the image. And our new cameras support NDI as well. And actually, our complete product line of camcorders and PTZ cameras, they also have the same over IP interface, the same control from the browser or from RMLP100 remote controller. And they also can produce NDI, NSRT, and RTMP, RTMPS. So it's very similar in terms of workflow, but camcorders give you quite unique experience in the studio because of a lot of manual controls.
Great. And now, Paul, I'll ask the one that's about, conferencing and whatever, and that is, when you're working with a school, what suggestions would you make when selecting a PTZ camera for studio use as opposed to a conference room that we talked about now? Because you could use the same camera in both, but maybe you don't want to, and maybe you don't even want a PTZ camera. Maybe you want just a Zoom camera or another type of camera. So talk about what you see, education hitting that sweet spot for schools looking to put a studio together.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're looking into the classroom, I think that 1080p video is absolutely fine. And that's why we are releasing brand new 1080p cameras still to this day, because they're more affordable and the video quality is absolutely fine for lecture capture, for distance learning, for video communications, for the bulk of what you need to do in a classroom. So what we think is more important on the innovation side is actually the auto tracking. And so using that optical zoom to zoom in and get a really clear image of the words that are being written on a blackboard or a whiteboard, the optical zoom is a lot more important than 4K resolution in a classroom. And so the PTZ Optics Move camera series all have built-in auto tracking. So it doesn't need to require an extra computer running some software. It's all built in directly to the camera. Now, when we talk about the studio, I think that 4K becomes a lot more important. And that's why we offer the series in both 1080p and 4K, because when you get into the studio, you're going to want to future-proof that. 4K is still complicated to pull off. It still requires a lot more bandwidth. It still requires a lot different cabling. It still requires all new hardware in some cases. So if you buy 4K cameras, you can still use them in 1080p formats and still output video in 1080p. So I think it's important for, in the studio sense, to probably future-proof your investment as a teacher, as a university, and probably invest in the 4K. But when you're rolling out hundreds of classrooms, do they need 4K? My professional opinion is no.
Cool. So now let's take a walk outside the studio. And let's talk about some of the cool things you can do around the school. Now, live production studio can continue to be function as a central hub. And one obvious place for this is the auditorium for live productions. Now, there's typically a very big difference between the auditorium you find in a middle school or a high school or in a college university. So let's talk about that staged auditorium, secondary school versus high school higher education, different configurations for different needs. Let's start with you, Edgar.
This sounds like it's a higher, level production, which perhaps require better image quality. And of course, you need longer zooms. You'd like to have perhaps 10-bit processing to make sure that you can handle wider dynamic range, so you can see highlights and dark areas all well, recorded or well transmitted over IP. And we offer cameras with a 10-bit processing in the PTZ form factor, in a handheld camcorders form factor, and we also have 2/3 inch, the big camera, which also supports the same over IP operation, which is GY HC900, which takes 2/3 inch lenses, which actually we sell quite a lot into the high school and college education markets.
Cool, I thank you for that. Now, I want to jump to Gregor on this because, a high school, maybe 2 or 3 cameras most, let's be honest. Maybe you want one in the back of the room, one on the side, and one somewhere off stage in front. You're going to do a whole live event space that is a college level play performing arts center. You're going to need a little bit more. And let's focus on the camera side of it. What kind of cameras do you need in a staged auditorium for a high school, a college, where we're really talking about they're putting on, a Broadway show, let's say?
2 words: low light. You need something with a real sensor, something that can really get down there in low light. And then another thing that I think Paul was kind of mentioning there, which is really kind of clever, is that if you have students who are going to be helping you and operating the equipment, you want them to be operating and helping on equipment that they're going to see out in the field. So that's always a good thing, is just using cameras that are being used out there, and then that are capable. And so you need something with the lens. I know that most of these spaces are really far off, and so you need a lot of lens and optical image stabilization. A lot of these things are shaking, and they have air conditioners and stuff like that. So those are all really important, but I think a good lens and a good sensor and low light capability is clutch for those type of things. And the UE150 and the UE160 are the ones that we push out.
And I think one of the tricks you have when you ask that question is kind of a trick question. When the room's that big, do you want to cut from camera and camera that are fixed, or you actually want to try to follow the individual, either with a PTZ camera or a handheld camera, or robotically with a PTZ controller, or with automated PTZ control that's out there of motion. And I know I said a Broadway show, you're going to have a lot of people on the stage at the same time if you want to use auto tracking. Paul, you want to talk about some of the complexity that brings in and some of the solutions you guys have come up with for that?
Yeah, I think PTZ robotic cameras fit really well in auditorium spaces, because we don't want to be taking up platforms for tripods and camera operators when the space is built for people to sit there. So you can very easily mount discrete, small PTZ robotic cameras and control them remotely. And when you're talking about controlling these things remotely, one of the important things is selecting a PTZ joystick controller to do so. And PTZ Optics has a few of them. One of our premier ones is the PTZ Optics Super Joy. And if we're talking about using this in education, one of the things we've thought through is a basic mode, right? Because yes, there's lots of iris and shutter speed and things, but do students really know how to really tweak all of that? And we hope that they do. But when we're getting into K through 12, having like a basic mode and relying on student camera operators is a great thing. From an auto tracking perspective, one of our new innovations is that the PTZ Optics Move cameras can select between individuals. So if you've got 3 or 4 different people on stage, you can actually have a unique camera to specifically track that single person. So it doesn't use motion like some of the past generation cameras that we've offered. It's actually using computer vision to specifically follow a specific person. So that's good if you have, there usually when you're doing a play or a performance, there's the lead, who has got the lead part, and get those 2 or 3 people with an auto tracking camera framing them up. It makes the job of the video producer a lot easier because those 2 or 3 key people have dedicated auto tracking cameras. It reduces the amount of camera operators you need and makes it more flexible and just better video quality for everyone.
Awesome. Now I want to let people know we're getting questions coming in from viewers, which I love. In the last show, I kind of integrated those questions into the show itself, and I disrupted the whole flow of the show. So we will have a Q&A period at the end. Keep those questions coming in, but you learn from experience in a live show. So I want to thank Bob and Tyler and Roberta. We're going to get to all your questions and other people's questions. But now I wanted to flip the switch a little bit, and let's talk about sports. Because if you're education, you're doing video, streaming sports, not only is it something that's wanted to do, a lot of times, if you're the video production, video studio person, one of the great ways to get the money you want for the studio that you want is to talk to the head coach of the football team and the baseball team and get them enthusiastic about sports too. And sports have a lot of complexity. So we're going to break this discussion on sports into 3 pieces. The first thing, we're going to talk about small indoor sports venues. Then we're going to talk about larger outdoor venues. And then I want to talk about day versus night games in an outdoor venue. So let's start with an indoor venue. It's hockey, basketball, volleyball, and a gymnasium. Talk about, the camera configurations you think you need and what you've got. And I haven't let Paul start one yet, so I'm going to go to Paul and let Paul start this one off.
Well, I've worked with a lot of schools who are leveraging their broadcast clubs, for example, to try to record and live stream all of this content. Because as soon as you start live streaming football, then the lacrosse moms want involved, right? And the volleyball. And it starts to kind of spool out of control. How are you going to manage all of this? You've usually got a small team, an IT person, maybe an AV person, from a staff perspective. So having these cameras on the network is huge. And having a centralized hub, as we talked about earlier, is that multi-purpose room capable of, you can take an esports club, and those usually have pretty powerful PCs, and turn each one of them into a unique production system, whether you're installing Wirecast or OBS on those systems. So getting the cameras on the network is the key here, allowing you to remotely control them, allowing you to get the video in, whether that's via NDI and maybe NDI HX, the high efficiency version. But if you're doing indoor sports and outdoor sports, and you're going to have games happening at the exact same time. And so getting those cameras on the network permanently installed in an indoor or outdoor enclosure, because there's going to be balls flying around. So a vandal-proof enclosure for those cameras is really good to protect them, whether it's indoor or outdoor. And yeah, just thinking about what you can do on the network, because the technology has come so far. You can remotely broadcast and produce those games without having to send someone to every court, and you can centralize that hub.
Edgar, small indoor sports facilities. What are your thoughts on that? And I want you to really talk about, is it practical to reset up the PTZ cameras every time, or do you try to pick a spot that'll work for, if it's a gym, you can have basketball, volleyball, 3 or 4 sports. So talk about that, the flexibility and what you need and what's really involved. And I just want to say, I want to thank all you guys for bringing a very important theme on this, which is eduStream, which is not only do we want to produce content, we want to teach people how to be the content producers of the future. And I love how you all have brought students into this discussion, which I think is the most valuable thing about this, because we want kids to be the integral part of producing the content with the stuff we're talking about. Today's show is really about putting the right tools in the kids' hands. So Edgar, take it away.
I can't agree more. So when you cover sports, you have option to use PTZ cameras, but you also can use camcorders installed on the tripods, which allow to follow game in many cases more precisely. So it's a truly choice of the customer. But good news, you can have combination. Most of our customers use combination of cameras. You can have multiple PTZ cameras, perhaps permanently installed in the venue, so you can have some video coverage immediately. And you would want to mix maybe 1 or 2 handheld camcorders on a good quality tripods with a good fluid heads. So now you can follow, especially fast games like basketball. You really perhaps may want to use the human operator to control those cameras. And speaking about sports, we have a couple models of camcorders which have one unique feature, is the score overlay. These cameras can actually talk to the scoreboard and take the score, timer, and everything else, and overlay it right here in the low third, and this happening automatically. So this way, you can use this camera as a camera for the lead feed with the score, and then combine it with the PTZ cameras for sideline coverage.
Excellent comment on that, and I'm gonna jump to the big fields, because I think these guys hit the indoor pretty big. So let's talk about putting cameras on an outdoor field like a football field, lacrosse field, or a baseball field. And I want to go to you, Gregor, on this one. But one of the things I want to talk about that I think we haven't talked about yet that I think is important, and that is the way you add value to a sports broadcast is, first of all, more cameras, more value. Second, what Edgar said about the scoreboard. The other big thing to me that's going to separate your sports production from everyone else's is if you could do instant replay. And to do instant replay, we need something very important out of our camera, and that's high frame rates. So Gregor, talk about the cameras for sports, thinking about that you want to do those slow motion instant replays. You want to track the guy a little more carefully, and from the standpoint of view of making it look, you can't be Fox Sports, but you could also look a lot better than the coach's camera that's sitting up, in the box that's just following the widescreen view of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's face it, the parents of those kids are your customers.
That's right.
You want them excited. You want them seeing something great. The UE160 actually does have a high frame rate, so you can have a robotic camera that does 120 frames. And then another thing that a lot of people are take into consideration is the color, the actual how controllable is the color. And so is that logo, if your school color is a special green or a special red, how accurate is that? Because you want it to be accurate as possible. And then the ability to tie all that in right into one place, and so that one person can kind of control all that stuff in one place. So the 160 along with the handheld camcorders like Edgar was saying, and just being able to have all that in one place and be able to control it and have those high frame rates and have all the ins and outs that you want. Absolutely, it's super important.
Now, Paul, I think it was very interesting how they mentioned color. You guys have added some interesting color tools to your cameras to help matching them be easier. And I know when we first set up this studio, the biggest nightmare was depending on what camera angle I had, I was wearing a different color shirt. Now, this was in the early days, as before the pandemic. You know, we were a little ahead of ourselves. And one of the things that I've really loved is the tools that all the camera companies and even the TriCaster vMix people put together, because they realize that, you know, the shirt really should stay the same color. But Paul, you guys have added a great set of color tools to the Move 4Ks. Talk about those a little bit.
Yeah, so we have the new camera management platform. It's called our CMP software, which not only does it have the ability to pull in up to 4 cameras at the same time, but you can use a little color dropper to see exactly the red, green, and blue values, which sometimes deviate a little bit based on angles and color. And then you can make the changes down. Once you have one camera exactly how you like it, you can download it and apply it to other cameras with kind of a drag and drop easy format. So the color corrections are obviously very important. When you're looking at these big fields, you obviously want to have a lot of optical zoom. So this is where that 4K can come into play beyond just streaming in 4K, but you can use a 4K camera with a 1080p output. And what that essentially will do is double your resolution size. So with our latest firmware, we have something called super resolution mode, where you can actually use, the camera has a 4K sensor and you can use all of that, but only digitally basically enhance it 2x and still get a 1080p video stream. So when I was talking about being 75 feet away with a 30x and get a head and shoulders of a presenter, now you can be 150 feet away. So this is where, even if you don't have the infrastructure or you're not planning to stream in 4K, the 4K camera sensor allows you to get additional, close-up shots, whether it's the batter from all the way in the back where the stadiums are. Sometimes they'll put on the top of the scoreboard, they'll put a PTZ camera, and you want to get the baseball batter, for example. That's getting up there in the distance range. So using the 4K with the digital zoom can help there.
So let's talk about that, because that's a feature that I think we could go a little bit more into, because it's really cool. I could set a PTZ camera at the center line for an indoor auditorium for a basketball or a volleyball game, let's say. Or if I was going to do a football or lacrosse game, I could have it set up on the 50-yard line. And I could have a 4K sensor, but I could carve out 2, 3, 4 HD images out of that for an HD stream. So I could have this one camera that doesn't move, actually providing 3 camera angles or more. So I could have an HD that's the wide view. I'm thinking football field. I got it up in the box. It's a 4K. I got the whole wide view. I could have one quarter of the field, the center of the field, the other side of the field, or I could even have an end zone close up for the back of the end zone. That's a feature that's been around for a while, but I'm glad you mentioned it, Paul, because it can really open up the opportunities. As we talked about, you could have one PTZ camera that you use for that, and that camera could go to wherever you go. You set it up, and you set up your 4K presets that can do that. And that's one of those novel features that I don't think we would have mentioned on this show had not it just come out organically from the discussion. So I think it would be a great time now to jump into some of the questions that our viewers have come in. Now, we kind of just answered one, because Tyler said, can you match multiple cameras together? But he also asked another question that I'm going to ask to the 3 of you guys, and you could probably all answer simultaneously, and that is, can I color match your Panasonic camera to your JVC camera, to your PTZ optics camera? Can we do it, or does it all have to be the same camera? Whoever wants to jump in. Gregor.
I would say it's possible. You can certainly match the Panasonic to the JVC and the PTZ optics, yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yes, why not?
Paul, your thoughts on that? Will your software work with their cameras too, or just yours?
The brand new camera management platform has been designed to only work with PTZ optics cameras. I'm sorry, but I still think you can color match pretty well.
Absolutely, yes.
And as we talk about remote and cloud, I think that's going to be one of the features we're going to see in a remote cloud world, where we'll have an AI that we can engage and say, AI, take these 3 cameras and just color match them. The most important color is my team's home uniform, and match everything else. And the AI will handle that for us, you know, from whatever cameras we fill in. But I'm getting a little ahead of ourselves into a level of production that I don't think this show was for. But that's what happens. And the truth of the matter is, we talked about the kids. The kids who are in our classrooms today producing video on premise in a little side room, that huddle room, the studio we have, are eventually going to be producing their shows remotely through a cloud, through a collaborative effort where there could be people across the world, across the state, across the stadium, across the school district who are working together on a single production. So I think that's really important. We had two different questions. Pedro and Bob both asked about auto tracking. So Bob said auto tracking was once limited. I'm sorry, I'm having to look at the screen. I'm learning this. Was once limited to distance camera, this is from the camera to the talent. How far can the camera be from the talent for auto tracking? And I will add a caveat to that. And if I'm trying to discern one person from multiple people on stage, does the distance away from the stage become a factor? So raise your hand. Who wants to answer that one first? Gregor, you win.
The distance becomes a factor, but it's also got you have to consider the light in the room. So you can go a further distance if you have enough light, but if you're battling a low light situation, you may not be able to get as much distance in there. I hope that answers the question.
No, you did. And I want to add that if we bring everyone in, because I don't remember who said it, but the better your lighting is, the better your auto tracking works. The better your person or your people can be discerned from the background of what's going on, the better the auto tracking works. We also had a question, and is from Pedro. How many different types of auto tracking systems are there for PTZ cameras? So Paul, you've got the one that's in that you talked about. Edgar, you said you've got one built into your system.
Right, yeah, which also allows to select specific person from if you have many people, and then that will track that particular presenter. And I agree, of course, if you have better light, and of course, especially when people are dressed in kind of different colors, that will enhance and this will increase the probability of perfect tracking, throughout the show. Yeah. Distance, that's where you have your 30 times, 20 times zoom lenses for.
And Gregor, I know you guys have an auto tracking firmware upgrade for your cameras that educators can pretty much use for free, right? Talk about what you guys offer.
So our auto tracking is, we do have a 90-day free trial on the auto tracking, but it is something that you purchase, and it's a very powerful auto tracking, so it does need to exist on a separate thing, so it doesn't take resources away from the actual camera. But there's a couple of versions. There's the SF100, which is a 1-to-1, so one computer can operate one auto tracking camera, and then there's the SF200, which you can add, 2-3 more cameras to it and put them on servers, and from there you can just scale up. So a server can handle about 4 cameras, so if you need 12, you just put 3 of those up there. And then as far as the auto tracking capabilities go, we have facial recognition, we also track the body and the body type, and we have what we call deep learn, or the auto tracking is getting better and better every time you do update the firmware.
Cool. And well, I wanted to add that there's different levels of auto tracking. And I don't want to say you get what you pay for, because you guys keep making them better and better. But some of the things with auto tracking that I know you guys are trying to be nice to each other, so I'm just going to go through some general stuff that are important. And one is that the speed of which you can track the person becomes a factor, and for what you need it for. If it's just a professor who likes to walk around constantly, the fact that it's tracking him, it's a little jerky, is okay. Other things, no, I want the guy to be perfectly centered in the frame wherever he goes. Other tracking systems actually can kind of predict where the guy's going to go, because it's tracking more than his face and his arms and his legs and stuff. So auto tracking can go from free or included to more professional solutions like Gregor's. And then if you really need auto tracking on a high level, we work with these folks at MRMC who have this product called Polymotion Chat, which is actually you run it on a computer, and that gives you a highly sophisticated computer-based auto tracking, and it will actually set up like when you see how they shoot the science fiction movies on the green screen, the people on the ping pong balls, it always makes, there's all these little points it shows you as it's tracking the person beyond the face. The technology is insanely cool, and it can work on multiple people at the same time. And I bring it up because if that's really important to you, it's definitely something you want to investigate, getting into, because that's what I'm going to call the top of the line of the Cadillac for what we offer. But it can really do a tremendous job. But auto tracking, I also suggest if you're going to do it, try what you can get as close to free first, and then see if you need to upgrade to the better stuff or not. But auto tracking is a feature that coming into this year, I thought was going to be like the biggest thing, as a big point of it. And a lot of people have asked about it. It's very important, but I think people have been kind of scared of it because they're worried how it's going to work for them and stuff like that. But I think as we see developments in AI and stuff coming out, because that's really what it is at that point. And I think people are going to get more and more comfortable about it. And if you want to learn more about auto tracking, I think we've got videos on our website. We've covered auto tracking with each of you guys, as well as the Polymotion chat software that I talked about. And you can always give us a call and we'll go more in depth with you for that. So we did auto tracking. Let me see what we have. Oh, Tyler asked an early question about, I got to pull him into this now. I lost it. It wasn't Tyler. Hold on. See, that's what happens when we have such a successful show. We have so many questions. Roberta asked, okay, we hold our meetings in the cafeteria. We want to have hybrid meetings in the future, combining face-to-face and online. Our conferencing platform is Zoom. I think we need to get at least 2 cameras, one on the head table and one focused on the floor, i.e. the person in the audience. We have no control over lighting. What would you recommend? Thank you. And I think this one, Paul, this is in your wheelhouse. Nothing to put you guys down, but when I think of Zoom and Zoom integrating with our products, I think of Paul, who was so ahead of the curve on Zoom. This guy was pitching me on Zoom years before the pandemic. I kid you not, saying we should have gotten involved in it. We weren't ready for it. We didn't. We missed that boat, but Zoom still helped us sell a lot of PTZ cameras. But Paul, this question, using Zoom where you've got a meeting in a cafeteria, there's people in the audience as well as a presenter, how would you go about doing that?
Well, one thing that Zoom really wants in most cases is a USB connection to the computer. And if you plug a PTZ Optics camera into your computer with USB, it actually provides either Zoom Room iPad control. So if you decide to do a Zoom Room and you have an iPad, you can actually use the iPad to pan, tilt, and zoom the camera. But a nice thing too is that you can actually, it supports remote PTZ camera control. So you can actually have someone in your office or remote to the event, actually right-click the video, request remote camera control, and they control the PTZ camera that way. But of course, if you're going IP, which is not a bad idea, NDI has a webcam input software that will create a virtual webcam output that you can use with Zoom. And that allows you to kind of switch cameras and do some more advanced things as well. So there's a couple different ways to do it, but the easiest way is to get a USB connected PTZ camera and plug it right into your computer.
Cool. Now, Roberta, we are recording this and it will be available to watch later or to share with friends and stuff. And then, Adam, can we just move this to a different slide? It's been the same slide for 10 minutes. It just drives me crazy. Bob asked a follow-up question because he didn't like our answer to lights with distance, because I think he's got a specific problem, which is, I'm going to guess, he wants to auto track from a back of a room that's probably like an auditorium. So let's say we are 100 feet away. Can we use auto tracking? Will it work well? What are the catches? What do we need? Does the zoom of the camera make a difference? Greg, I'm going to kick this one to you. What's your thoughts on that? Oh,
absolutely. The auto
cool
tracking
camera move. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're live. Absolutely, the auto tracking will work. You definitely want to get the right camera. If you get kind of one of our POV cameras, that might not go the 100 feet, but if you use anything from a UE40 to a 50, 80, and certainly anything above an 80 would work. You could pull that off at 100 feet.
Very cool. And at that point, lighting, if the lighting's right and the camera's the right zoom, you're going to get the right results.
Correct.
But if the lighting's not good and it's dark and you can't discern the people from the back, you're not going to get great results. So you're going to have to take that into account, and you may have to change your background or put some extra fill lights in or other things like that. We talked about students doing this. What a great lesson for your classroom kids to do is we have this auto tracking thing. Let's optimize it, the lighting, for the auto tracker. And what a great lesson you can do with each semester's group of new kids where they can learn. I'm going to cough, guys.
You know, I was going to just add one thing that because these are PTZ cameras and they're relatively small, why being that far away? You can mount every PTZ camera upside down and to the ceiling, and you can always, because these are not camcorders and not big 2/3 inch cameras. These are relatively small cameras, so you can always move them closer. And this perhaps is going to be the easiest, solution to that problem, being that far away. But of course, light is the key, not only for auto tracking, but also for getting a good quality picture, which is essential.
Awesome. And you know what? Let's pick up on something you mentioned, because we're talking about PTZ cameras. Let's go into a little bit more that I guess you learn as you do the show. And that is the beauty of a PTZ camera versus a handheld camera is I don't have to have room for an operator behind it. And I can mount it left, upside down, left side, right side, and correct the field of view from the camera where I'm going. And even more importantly, I don't need a full tripod because there's not going to be someone operating. I can mount it on a post or a pole. One of the things that we run into, however, that I want to give the big warning is everyone thinks I'm going to put the PTZ camera in the back of the room. And then they forget they mount it on the wall. And then they forget that there's people up in that balcony sitting there. And the vibration can be a real problem. So I like to remind people and teachers will get this, the old gag, when you hold a pencil at the bottom and you wiggle it, it looks like it's rubber. Well, the same thing is true when you're far away. Vibration becomes a much bigger issue. So to Edgar's point, although you think you want that 30X on the wall behind you, you may be much better suited having a 12X hanging upside down from a boom or what have you to work on those situations. For outdoors, I think we mentioned it, but let's go into it a little bit, and that is you can't just put a PTZ camera outdoors. You have to have it be in some kind of outdoor enclosure or an outdoor made unit, not just for the weather, but someone said, you can get the ball can hit it, or vandalism or stuff like that. So remember that what we're putting out here outdoors has to be for outdoors on that. Let me check and see if I have any. New question came in from Henry with the NDI feature. Would you only need the one Cat6 cable between the camera and the controller for Power SDI? And then how do you control the switching, the connecting? I'm going to take this one, guys, a little bit, but I'm going to kick it over to each of you, and I want to go over what NDI is, because I think there could be some educators on here. We're used to doing live video shows about pro video, but someone in education might not understand what NDI is. So NDI is a network device interface that was invented by Dr. Cross and the people over at NewTek. And what it does, it allows you to use a single cable I'm going to focus on a PTZ camera to connect to a PTZ camera. That over that cable, you can send the video signal from the camera to the control room or the switcher, but also you will get the control of the camera. You can get tally light. You can get the ability to do the adjust the color like we talked about. You can even run comms on them and things like that. So NDI opens up a great workflow on stuff like that. And if you're interested about doing NDI, you definitely want to watch tomorrow's show because we're going to get into that. But I want to kick it over to you, Gregor, because I saw you were wanting to jump up and answer. So now that I let people know what NDI is, answer the actual question a little better for the person.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I'm going to say what NDI isn't, right? And just that, it may not absolutely be necessary in some circumstances. With our cameras, for example, you can get the Cat5 cable, you can plug it into the camera, you can get power, you can get controllability, you can get all your audio feeds, you can get all your video feeds and streaming and all that stuff over there. But what we have what we call a virtual USB driver. And so if you thought you had to use this whole NDI system just to get into a Teams meeting, it's not necessarily the case. You could just use a virtual USB driver. And when you do that, what happens is our camera is going to send the 1080. Whereas like if you're over an actual USB cable, you're inside of that USB restrictions of how much resolution you can use to get there. So if you use a virtual USB driver and put it on and put your cameras on the network, and now your cameras are Zoom cameras, and by the way, our cameras are Zoom and Zoom Room certified in the 40 and the 50, for example. And so we're all NDI. All our cameras will handle NDI. So we're all NDI. We're all Zoom. We're all the stuff. But being able to use a virtual USB driver could just massively simplify things. And now you can use your cameras as USB cameras for webcam, Zoom, stuff like that, and as well as production cameras. Get the 4K, get the UHD, all the other fun stuff over there. So I hope that answered it.
Awesome. Edgar, your thoughts on that?
NDI is amazing invention, and what is it is very simple. It's a single cable. It's the same LAN cable that you connect your computer to the same exactly office network. You don't need anything extra, and the same cable will carry audio, video, control, and everything else. So it's super simple, super user friendly, and you don't need to worry about IP addresses, port numbers, because NDI is cameras automatically announce itself on the network. And next time you go to your TriCaster to add new input, you'll see a drop-down menu which lists all cameras which are connected to NDI on local area network at this moment.
Paul, your thoughts?
Big fan of NDI. It's just really flexible. That's why we've built it into all of the Move 4K cameras natively, so there's no need to upgrade them or anything. It's super flexible. Just a big fan.
And what I want to stress is you don't have to use all NDI, but you can. Most people are using a workflow that sets some combination of, your mixer or switcher might have HDMI or SDI. You have some NDI inputs you want to use, which are really great for especially with a PTZ cam. But, the workflow you want to put together is the one that works with the equipment you have and the equipment you're getting as an educator, because we'd all like to hope that we're getting a brand new budget that's going to get us, enough to put a whole new studio in and put cameras in every athletic field. But the truth of the matter is we know that ain't happening in this world. So you might have to install it over the course of 2 or 3 years. You might have to use some older stuff, some stuff that's being donated by a local cable station that they say they're going to be donating it to you, but they're not going to be donating it till next year because there's things we put in. You're in education. We get it. It doesn't always go smoothly and easy for you guys, but NDI is definitely something you want to investigate. What I want to jump on that is to say that you guys did such a great job talking about students. I want to keep talking about students, because students who learn NDI have now learned a whole new workflow that there's there's not thousands of people who know what NDI is and use it every day. There might be tens of thousands of people who know what it is, but the people actually using it and troubleshooting it and making it work and updating it and adding new features for it and really understanding how it opens up and unlocks such a world of flexibility that was unheard of in video production is amazing. So by having your students be the people learning this NDI technology, you're giving them a skill and an experience that if they want to go into sports video, communications, journalism, and they're listing things they know and they mention NDI, someone who's in our industry is going to say, wow, that kid's got some experience. I got to talk to him. The other thing that we talked about was the cameras and the controlling the cameras. Someone asked there are courses you can take. Almost every camera company now has YouTube videos you can watch to learn how to use the camera basically. And then the other thing that I suggest that people do if they're really going to get into cameras a little bit for their students is take some photography or some video cinema courses and learn about ISOs and f-stops and lighting and frame rates and stuff like that. You definitely want to teach that to your kids on what they're using, but you also, let's talk about what we had here. There's a camera operator, but in the world of the future, there's also going to be a PTZ camera operator, where if you're doing a school production, teaching a student how to use a PTZ camera, how to look at his own multi-viewer, how to listen to the director and know which camera to get together and communicate back, that's a whole job out there. And I think while we're talking to educators, I really want to stress this, and you're all nodding, so I'm going to give you all a little word on this before we end the show and go on to our free prizes. I want to bring up the free prizes graphic because I love teasers. We have an industry that's a bunch of people in it who look like the people on the screen right now. Now, Paul, you're younger than us, Gregor too, but it's a lot of older guys, older engineers who knew how to do things. And about 10 years ago, we started getting more efficient with productivity tools that really meant those old guys could do more with less people. So there wasn't really a bunch of 30 and 40-year-olds in our industry right now. But now we're moving to this IP world where the old guys like me are video people, not computer people. They don't understand or want to work with these future technologies. And by giving your students the opportunity to work with these IP-based workflows, whether it is NDI or SMTP 2110, and to be working on remote productions, REMI productions, cloud type things, you are giving them exposure to a skill set that our industry is going to like a freight train, and there aren't people for those jobs today. And having your kids work with it and being able to talk about that they're using it could help. Something could be the differentiator that gets them into a college, that gets them into a school. Perhaps though they don't write an essay about how they produce video, they write an essay about the show that went to hell that was terrible and how they figured out on the fly how to fix it, and they do throw some video clips. And all of a sudden I'm thinking about kids for my journalism school or my kids for my video production stuff. I'm like, that's something that's very different. So you guys did such a good job talking about students. I want you to just give a pitch, not for your brand, but for getting into video technology and why it's something on a high school or college level is something you would want to do. And I'm just going to start with you, Paul, because you're the youngest guy in the room, I think. So we'll go in age order, which means I'll be last.
Well, you know, I'm big into education. I've got 3 kids myself, and you know, they love tech, right? This is the young generation, but it's also for a lot of parents and educators. It's like, okay, they love tech, but are they binging YouTube all day, right? Like, how can we turn this into a productive, you know, this desire they have? And I think video production fits squarely in the middle there, right? Playing too many video games, okay, that's not great, but esports, can we turn it into a video production, right? Are we live streaming that? Can we turn this into a club so we're doing it socially in a shared space instead of in the basement all alone and isolated? So I think this is an important topic, and I think education across the board is finally figuring out that we have to embrace esports. We have to embrace live streaming. We have to enable the students, and we're turning a really big corner here, and just be open to the younger generation wanting to do things differently, and that's okay. I just hope the younger generation has the time and energy to learn from everyone else, because they're not going to be successful without you know, standing on the shoulders of everyone else and what Dr. Andrew Cross built, right, from NDI.
Yeah.
So it's important to educate them on where we are and what they're capable of. But I think we need to let them loose, let them enjoy.
Gregor, your thoughts?
Absolutely. No, this one hits home for me. I'm actually I came up as an AC and operator. I came up through the camera world, and I just remember coming out of college and getting into, you know, production and realizing nothing I touched in college is anything like what was happening in the real world. It's a big deal. You know, give these kids every chance they can to touch equipment that they're going to find out in the real world. You know, I think that, you know, maybe there's some fears out there with like AI doing things that are, you know, video wise. And so, you know, maybe there's some things that those jobs may go away in commercial and fiction and stuff. But when it comes to live events and things where, you know, like what we're doing and streaming and stuff, you won't be able to fake that. And there will always be a market there for that. And you'll always need those cameras for that. You know, everything that Gary just said is absolutely accurate. We need as many kids joining the creative army as we can, and that's my pitch. Please join us. Careers at Panasonic.com, I think, is the thing that we're always looking for interns. We're always hiring. The technology field is alive and well.
Edgar, your thoughts on this?
Oh, you know, I feel jealous actually to this generation right now, because when I started, it was all about film and tape, and you had to have a really expensive equipment to produce decent quality content. Today, there's so much stuff, and as long as you are creative, you have so many tools. And I'm so happy that education now stresses these classes of the film and TV production, and go for it. It will make you a better person. You will achieve more, regardless of whether you continue in this field or not, because ability to express yourself in front of the lens, ability to produce content is very important, and it will help you in any field, I think, of the future development.
You know, that leads me to a thought. I think I said it last year at EduStream, but I'll say it again because I think it's so telling. And that is, you know, we think of one of the greatest writers of all time to be William Shakespeare. He wrote plays, which is entertainment for the time. If he was alive today, he'd be producing a Netflix show, right? Or something on Amazon Prime. Or Absolutely. He'd be the guy running the Marvel Universe. I mean, I'm not trying to say that the Marvel Universe is the same thing as a Shakespeare play, but I mean, that's what we're producing. We're telling stories. And we're telling stories both through on Netflix, through live production. We watch a sport, when we're watching whatever it is, and we're content creators and storytellers. And you guys offer tools that make that possible. And we're doing EduStream to let teachers and educators know that those tools are here. They're here for you to create content and tell your stories, but they're also available for your kids to learn how to become storytellers and create content. So we're excited about that. I think your laptop went to sleep. Oh, we got it. So I'm going to jump in now for the giveaways that we have, because we've got prizes for the folks who logged into EduStream. But before I do that, I'm always being corrected. Am I talking about? I'm going to talk about the prizes. Then I'm going to talk about the shows tomorrow. Then I'm going to give my guests the last word. So the prizes, we have Wirecast Pro license. We have a Netgear switch, which is incredibly important for NDI workflows. We'll talk about that tomorrow. We have an AVIO from Epiphan. And Paul, is this a typo? Can we bring Paul up here? We're giving away 50 HuddleCam webcams?
That's right. You know, when it comes to schools and we want to be able to equip all the teachers, the whole esports lab. So yes, 50 webcams to the winner today.
Cool. I'm not really sure how we're doing that. I don't know if we're giving out to 50 individual ones or multi-packs to people. I'll let other people figure that out for tomorrow's show, and I'll do a little bit on how we're going to do that. Now I'm trying to pull up the slide that I need. There it is. Thanks to all our vendors.
I apologize that I have to run. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
My daughter's peeking in. I got to run.
All right, I get it. First job as a parent, right? So let's talk about all our vendors and sponsors. I want to thank all you guys, all three of you, for being on the show. I want to thank all our vendors and sponsors for EduStream. They're up there. I want to remind you that it's brought to you by the folks at Broadfield and Video Guys. And then the last slide should be tomorrow's show. And tomorrow's show is tips for building a studio production studio, a school studio production studio capable of handling all your needs now and in the future. And that's what I really want to stress on tomorrow's show. And we talked about a little bit on today's show. We're not just going to talk about what works today, but what you should be looking into as an educator for a studio to get something that's going to be, there's no such thing as future-proof, but something that's going to be that you're going to be build on and grow on, that'll be the foundation for your next generation of video production studio, and where your kids can be working on the latest tools to help them be successful with their careers and where they're going. So this is Gary. I'm the host of eduStreamTV. I want to thank the folks at Broadfield and Streaming and Video Guys for sponsoring and making this event possible. I want to thank all our vendors who participated in it, and I'm looking forward to talking to you guys tomorrow about the studio stuff. Register. Thank you so much for everyone who gave us great questions. This is the most questions I ever had on a show. Paul, how to run. Edgar, your last thoughts?
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for their time, for watching this. And don't be shy. Reach out to Broadfield. Reach out to JVC. My name is Edgar Shane. You will get my email address from Broadfield. We will help you to select equipment. We'll help you to set up equipment. We'll help you to do everything exactly the way you want. And just do it. And we are here to assist.
Cool. And I just want to mention that we can also put you in contact with local dealers. We have a network of local dealer affiliates. So if you need someone to not just buy this stuff from, but help you install it, run the wires, get the cabling, everything soup to nuts, we've got people throughout the country that we can refer to you for that. If you reach out to us at Edgar, we'll help you give you an outline, and then we'll bring in a local vendor who can actually do all that stuff and perhaps even do training and do your customer service and stuff like that. Gregor, your last thoughts?
Absolutely. Similar to what Edgar said, I just want to say thank you so much, especially the people who are tuning in, the people who are going to tune in later. I want to thank Video Guys. I want to thank Broadfield. Like, you can't find a better group of people to buy from than those. I cover the Northeast, but there's someone just like me that covers every territory. There's someone that also covers projectors and displays and also covers audio. And if you need to demo equipment, if you need engineering support, if you need someone to come by and help you and kind of walk through the space and really visualize what your solution is, we're there. And we're more than willing to help. And again, I really appreciate the time and everyone tuning in.
Great. This was Gary. I'm the host of the EduStream. Thank you very much. Thanks to all our vendors and sponsors. Once again, tomorrow's show is on, putting a studio together that'll be future-proof. We want to thank you all for coming in.